All right, welcome everybody to the March edition of the Kentuckiana FileMaker Developers Group. Quick reminder, if you are joining us or watching us on YouTube, be sure and join us in person the fourth Tuesday of every month. We'd love to have you. This month we're going to have, you can check us out at kyfmp.com. This month our presenter is Vince Mennano, who is going to be, well, I'll let Vince describe what he's going to be presenting for us. I'm just going to go ahead and turn it right over to you, Vince.
What he's going to be today, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. If this was April 1st, I'd have a really interesting topic, but thank you for having me. My presentation is going to be about the next release of InspectorPro, something that I've been doing for a very long time, as probably Stephen will remember. This next release is very different, and so you'll see in the presentation what it is. But it's a small group. Feel free to go ahead and interrupt me if you have any questions. I don't mind at all. So just stop, and I might not be able to see your hands or whatever, but just feel free to stop and ask questions. All right. So you can see my screen. Is that right?
Yep.
And you can hear me. Okay, so InspectorPro, this next release, we're trying to find some words to describe it. And we have a lot of features that we try to focus around performance, collaboration, and insight for development teams. And I like to say this changes everything. Maybe not everything, but a lot. And you will see. So my name is Vincenzo Mennano. I'm Chief Innovation Officer at Beezwax. Basically, I'm the person who brings the donuts, and there's a lot of really smart people at Beezwax, and I'm fortunate to be able to work with them and collaborate with them on building some cool things. So we do a lot of things at Beezwax. I myself have over 30 years experience with FileMaker. Beezwax has a lot of different clients and projects they work for. We're over 100 people at this point. We went over 100 last year, and we do work in different technologies. We do a lot of work with web, FileMaker, Tableau, and IT and DevOps work. So you can check out our blog, and there's a lot of interesting articles, not just about FileMaker, but about web technologies, Tableau, and all the various topics of things that we work on. So agenda, we'll go over like a brief history of Inspector over the years. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. We'll do a workflow comparison and a processing comparison of what's different between Inspector 7 and prior versions and Inspector 8, the soon to be released version. And then we'll do a demo, feature comparison and recap, but we'll see if we have time for the feature comparison because it's just a detailed comparison. We might just skip directly to the recap. Okay, so a brief history of Inspector. This is a screenshot of 3.1, and this was, oh my God, almost 20 years ago at this point. It's evolved over the years, and before Inspector, it used to be called Analyzer, and before Analyzer, it used to be called DocuScript. Now, for those of you who remember, who go back as far as I do, FileMaker 2.1 or 2, I built something called DocuScript, and it just did the scripts. It processed the scripts, and it was just a documentation of the scripts. And Bob Cusick had a product called QuickStats at the time, and I wanted to partner with Bob, but then Bob decided to venture off and do other things and kind of left the FileMaker community. And then I said, okay, well, Bob is gone, so I'm just going to try and do something more comprehensive, and that was the beginning of Analyzer, which was more in-depth analysis tool, but and then eventually when I left Waves in Motion and moved to California, I rebranded it as InspectorPro. And over the years, we've changed certain things. at one point, it was localized in 11 languages, which was a burden. It's like it was a lot of work. We don't do that anymore. Um, and you know, it's just some years it rolled up my sleeves and did very different things, and I learned a lot of things in the process of re-architecting and trying to optimize and on all that. And this is the current version that is shipping, and a lot of good things about it. We did improve the performance of it over the years, and we have this progressive dashboard, which is pretty cool to see every analysis, how you're trending on your problems, your counts of things that exist, calculations, dependencies, and items, and all that. But every version has always been kind of the same up until version 8. And so version 8, I'm just going to go through kind of a workflow comparison of what 7 and prior used to be, because it relied on the DDR. And so the solution would be hosted along with InspectorPro on the same server, and then you'd request the DDR, but the DDR was something that you had to generate through the FileMaker Pro app. And so if it's hosted, if you're on a WAN, you're suffering the performance issues that you have on a WAN, and you're pulling down the DDR, and then once you have it, you send it back to the server. So very inefficient. You have to download it, you upload it to Inspector. It's not able to be scripted, not server compatible, and it's very slow. Save as XML is actually, believe it or not, even slower. And you don't want to be generating, the XML for a hosted file. You definitely want to take advantage of the fact that you can run it on the server. So we'll show a couple of examples of that. So with Inspector 8, because we are switching over to using Save as XML as our source of truth to process that data, because it's able to be scripted and run on server, basically the solution runs a PSOS request on the server to generate the XML, and as soon as it's generated, it sends it over to Inspector to get processed. And the Inspector file doesn't even need to be open on the client. So this is all seamless. It can just run and tell Inspector to process it directly. Save as XML is server compatible. We have an add-on that you can add to your solution that makes the integration seamless and really, really easy. A comment can be added to every analysis that you run. That's optional. You can hold the option key down and bypass the comment request, and so you can just kick it off, and you'll see that it can stay in the flow of thought or development and not be interrupted at all. Just basically, it just kicks it off and runs it. Inspector doesn't even need to be open for this to run, and it's very, very fast on server. So again, small files, it's instant. Larger files might take a few seconds, but again, you're taking advantage of it. It's all run on server. Processing comparison. Before we look at that, let's just look at the graph. And so this is the graph in 7 that we had before, and this is the graph in 8. Basically, it has, if not the same feature set, I would say even more capabilities, borrowed from the fact that we are taking advantage of the changes in Save as XML as well. But interesting reduction in code. So we had almost 30% reduction in a number of tables, almost 65% reduction in the number of table occurrences. But relationships is where we just dramatically chopped that off. Incredible drop in the number of relationships that we needed to pull this together. And then because most of the work happens in the dependency table, anything that we can do in the dependency table, that's like the grand central station from a point of view. Anything that we can do to improve the dependency table imports, we'll see a dramatic increase in performance. So we went from 56 fields to 17, and we had a lot more indexes before, and so we chopped down not only the number of fields, the number of indexes, so performance is really, really different. So the one big difference from 7 to 8 is that 7 and prior versions used to gobble up everything every time. So you run an analysis, or you generate the DDR, and then Inspector processes that DDR and turns it into data that is stored in different records and different tables in Inspector. So that was the case that we did for a long, long time. So you have your first analysis. If you have 27 items, 8,000 calcs, and 15,000 dependencies, and next you add some more code, or you reduce code, then sorry, I turned off my notifications. I don't know why they're still running. Anyway, so you're actually just benefiting from the fact that or you're not benefiting because it's actually running all those all that processing every single time you run an analysis. So, modest size solution could be anywhere from 2 minutes at the first analysis, and it could go to like 5-10 minutes much later on after 50 analyses or 100 analyses, so they take longer and they add more data to your system. So it's not unrealistic that you'll end up with millions of rows across all the tables. And so as an example here, 100 analyses in Inspector 7 might take 18 hours to generate. And so that's a lot of time and a lot of data. With Inspector 8 is a very different approach, and mostly due to the benefits that we have with save as XML architecture that's got different kind of structure to it. And the first analysis is basically our baseline, and you gobble up everything. But then every subsequent analysis after that is basically just finding the differences and writing those out. And so if you have code, like let's say 100 fields in a table, and you're refactoring your solution and you're trimming things down, Inspector is going to go along with you. So if you reduce it to 80 fields, then the footprint in Inspector is basically 80 records in the field table. And so if you're refactoring code, it's going to get smaller. If you're adding code, it's going to increase just with regards to what you have in your system. The only place where code is actually going to grow is in a table called history or history items, where we actually track who changed what, where, and what attributes were changed. So basically, the footprint is dramatically different. So 7, again, you had millions of records across different tables after 100 analyses. After 100 analyses, you just have a reflection of what the footprint of your solution is in your system. And so in a day, you could run 100 analyses in a day. You could run 200 if you wanted to. Basically, if there's no changes, it knows right away and it just aborts. So, you can leave it running with a script schedule, or you can invoke it manually. Each developer has the opportunity to do that. Or again, if you write a script schedule, it could run behind the scenes and just gobble up anything that's available that it sees that's changed and write it out. So that's the big difference. Again, millions of data records versus only what's represented in your system. Baseline is up to 5 times faster, again, due to a lot of the benefits in rethinking what we did, and again, the dependency table improvements there. But, again, the incremental runs are dramatically different. They can be up to 40 times faster, if not more, just because at some point it runs, it knows there's nothing changed. It's done within literally a second or two. If there are changes, then it will process those changes, and then it does a post-processing step to update all the dependencies across the system. So if you run it frequently, you're actually benefiting from the fact that it takes a very little amount of work to keep it updated. And if you do a lot of work, let's say a whole day or a whole week's worth of work, and then you run it, then it's going to take more time. So incredibly different approach. Save as XML has a different structure than a DDR. It basically has these higher level catalogs. So here's an example. There's a base table catalog. What's really cool is it has these attributes called associated with the catalog and the items. So you have modifications, you'll have username, account name, and timestamp. Along with it, you'll have a UUID. And so because the modifications tell us, if we keep track of it, if this item has been changed, we can tell right away from the modification count. Not only the modification count in the catalog, but on the item as well. So first off, what we do is we scan the catalogs. We see there's a change to the script catalog. It tells us some modifications in the last user who touched that catalog. And then we scan the scripts to see which of the scripts have actually been modified, added, or removed. And then we'll process those. And so literally within a few seconds, we can be done. So that's a big difference. We also have new in the Save as XML, we have these parts, and the part list will define what the part is, and then all the objects are within the part. And so this is something we didn't have before in the DDR, and we also were missing in the DDR dependencies for fields that are part of sub-summary script step, sub-summary parts. We also have table occurrence notes, which we never had before. And so you can add a table occurrence note to your graph. The note can include emojis. The emojis come through just fine anywhere in the system, in script step comments and calculation dialogues and table occurrence notes. So the good thing is they just flow through and they show up as the intended emoji icon is as well too. Okay, so before I jump into any demos, any questions? Okay, no questions. So this is how you would create a new solution in Inspector. So you click the new solution icon top right. You type in the name of the solution. You give it a file name, and the other things are the script name and the file where the file is hosted, and that's for the API add-on integration. It'll generate what is called a solution ID, and what I'm going to show you here is how to bring in the add-on so that you can add the integration to your solution, basically. So if you go into layout mode and then you add the InspectorPro add-on, and once you add it to your solution, what it does is it adds the script, it adds the layout, it adds a table, and then if you drag the add-on to the layout, as you see here, it'll add this button, and then when you use the button, it'll run the script and allow you to configure the solution ID that this solution is belonging to. And the rest of it, basically, if it's a single file, it'll just generate the XML for this file and then hand over processing to Inspector. If it's a multi-file solution, then there's a few more steps that you'll need to add to copy over some helper scripts into the other files. That will this script will then be the controller. It will call those other files to generate the XML for all the related files, and then call the request to have Inspector do the processing on all those files. So it can be single file, has support for single file or multi-file solutions. So that's the integration. The integration options, again, you can run the integration from the file, or you can run it also from within Inspector. Here's an example of uploading manually a previously generated XML. So I said manual, I send it, it sends it to the server, and then once it's over on the server side, Inspector takes off and processes it. I'm going to make some changes to the file, and then we're going to run save as XML, but then we're going to run it using the window names script. So like over here, if I go back to Inspector, I'll say window names. This is where you can type a message. Below is the actual window name that you want to have it generate the XML for. And so this file is hosted and Inspector is hosted both on the same server. I'm in Florida, the server's in California. And I'm going to fast forward this because I don't want you to have to wait for this. But basically, this is what I was telling you. Save as XML is incredibly slow. And so you don't want to have to, and this is a small file. So now it's finished. And now, again, the XML has been generated locally, and then it's sending it back to the server to process it. And, you know, you don't want to do that. I mean, the reason those integrations are there is if you have a file that's not hosted and you want to, you know, work with the file locally, etc. Okay, so I'm going to make some more changes here, and then we're going to fire it off with the add-on integration right from Inspector. So I go back to Inspector. I click this. I go click on the API integration. This will fire off an FMP URL that will call the scripts that we inserted into that file, which then generate the scripts on the server and then run it, and it's already done. So if you look, we'll see the results of the most recent changes, which is 2 objects were deleted, an object was added, and some modifications to the layout. And we'll look at those a little bit later in some other examples. Once you have a solution, and you have hundreds of analyses or thousands, you can reset it. There's a couple of options to reset it. One is, I mean, you can change some of these attributes here, but you can reset it. And what this will do is it'll remove all the analyses, but it will also keep any notes, tags, and members who you've associated with the solution. If you want to remove the solution entirely, you can delete the solution, and you can do this. It gives you a warning, but if you know what you're doing, you can hold the Option key down with a lot of these dialogues, and it'll bypass the warning. It'll let you just do the action. So now I just Option deleted the solution. The solution is actually gone. Okay, so staying in the zone is one of the major kind of things that we strived for. And so here's an example of, I'm going to go and make changes to this layout. I'm going to change some of the attributes here. I'm going to enable quick find, and then I'm going to change the table occurrence context for this layout. And then I believe I delete this button because I have these recorded messages, videos here, so I just talk over them. So I delete this button, and then I'm going to go ahead and run it with the integration. I'm just going to press Option to run it, so it's running. And if I go look at the most recent analyses, I'll see that the object was deleted. So there's the and a layout was modified, and here's all the attributes that were changed for that layout. So the different options, and then the layout name and the table occurrence changes. So that's okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to change security. So we have an account called Julia, and we're going to change her privilege set. We're going to change the description and various other things, and then we're going to run it again, and we're going to see that those things get changed on the inspector side. So I'm going to run it, and again, holding the Option key down. If I go back here, I go look at the most recent analyses, and then you'll see 4 attributes changed for that privilege, for that account, and so on and so forth. So now, if we go look at the dashboard for this solution and drill into accounts, we're going to go search for Julia's account. Actually, we're going to bring up the history for Julia's account. I'm going to just pause here for a moment. Actually, we'll come back to this dialogue because I have another change to Julia's account that I'm going to make, and then I'm going to run it again. So again, I change the privilege set, and any changes I'm making here and how they're tracked applies to anything else in the system, like whether it be layouts, value lists, tables, table occurrences, fields, etc. It's the same concept. This time I did not hold the Option key down when I clicked the button to process it, and now I get the opportunity to type a message. And if you see here behind the scenes, the account got updated almost immediately. And now we see the two changes here that got reported. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go back into security, but this time we're going to just remove Julia's account entirely. So by removing it, hold the Option key down and press it. If you look in Inspector, the account's gone. Okay, so Julia's account is gone. And so there's a new feature that we added. So with global search, so you can search even in deleted items, and we can bring up the change history of it. So what we just did was we removed Julia's account, and because it's no longer in the accounts table, we can't go access that account and see the changes to it. However, what we just did was search it using global search, and global search allows you to search across items, calculations, and history, something that we didn't have before in Inspector 7. And because it found it, you're able to also recreate again the history of changes. So from the bottom going upward, we'll see here that the account Julia existed when the baseline import happened. And if that was not the case and Julia's account was added after the baseline import, the bar on the left would be green. It would tell you Julia's account was added by whoever the account name was that added it, and what analysis it was added and when. And then every change that happened to Julia's account and all the attribute changes that occurred are tracked on what analysis, on what time, and who did them. And then in analysis 5, I made some other changes. And then because the account was deleted, it shows a red bar and it shows who deleted it and at what time. If the account still existed, it'd show a purple bar, and it would just say the account still exists. So basically, you're able to do kind of this audit level tracking. However, there's a few caveats to the auditing of the data that we're seeing here, because it is a multi-development environment, and you could have 2 or 3 people working on the same file. And so one person could go in and make some script changes, and another person could go in right after that person and make some other changes. And if the first person didn't run the XML, then those changes that person made are not recorded. So because you have to actually invoke it to generate the XML, you have to do that so that you can record what changes you made. If someone else was making layout changes and you finish your script changes and then you run it, their changes come for the ride as well. So whatever's been changed or edited in the file and has been saved, those get reported. So it's not just the fact that you made the script change that you're reporting only the script changes. The fact is that you're generating the XML for the whole file. Whatever's ready in the file or whatever got changed in the file is going to get picked up by Inspector. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? No questions? Okay.
I had a question,
yeah,
Vince. When you say multi-file, do you mean multi-table or multi-file?
Multi-file.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can have, let's say, yeah, go ahead.
So if you got one file with 20 different tables, that's one file. So you don't have to do the other what you talked about. Like you said, there are additional steps if you had a multi-file solution. I just wanted to verify that.
Yeah, what you'll need to do is there's a helper script that gets added as part of the add-on, and that helper script, you just copy that into your other files, and then the controller script. And I can show you if you'd like to see it. Let me open it up. So in the scripts, and this is just a lot of just different things in here, but so this generate XML is what you would copy over into the other files. I believe it's this one. No, maybe it's this one, process XML. And then this is the controller script. And the controller script is the one where you would add let's see, no, it's this one here, process XML. And the controller script, this one here, is where you would basically branch the logic here to say, here's if I have one file or multiple files, you would just call the same script, generate single XML in your other files. So when it comes to this point in the script, you'd have you'd have this call to the other files, and it would generate the XML in all the other files. And then when it's done, it hands over the processing to Inspector. So this way, if you have a multi-file solution you want to analyze together, you generate the XML for all the files. And
Okay.
does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I had a question about, so as you're making these changes, each time you save a change, you're saving the XML again. And so you're basically, what this is doing is basically inspecting the one XML from another to see what has changed between the last time that it was saved. So basically,
Yes.
I guess what I'm getting at is that if you make a change and then change it again before you save again, it's only going to show the end result, correct? In the next.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, another question.
Question here, Stephen. So it looks like you've got access to the deepest dialog boxes that are within FileMaker via the XML. How far away are we from being able to create a file given the XML?
Yeah, I mean that's something that has been talked about for some time. Let me back up a little bit to answer that question for you, Stephen. So I started on this to rework this maybe 3 years ago to work with the Save as XML.
Mhm.
And there were a lot of bugs. There were a lot of bugs in the actual output of the XML. For example, the wrong UUIDs for fields that come from other files, and all kinds of issues, right? And a lot of those got reported, and then eventually they got fixed, but they haven't been released yet. And so now with the next release that's coming, they're going to show up there. So those fixes are going to finally surface and be available, and it's much more accurate and reliable. Although there's still some bugs that they need to address, but I'm figuring that because of the fidelity of everything is now documented correctly, etc. I think they're going to be at a good place again once they finish these last remaining issues. They're going to be at a good place where they could probably tackle the create from XML thing that you're referring to.
Mm-hmm. So you could have a dev, test, production workflow with those being totally independent of each other eventually if they get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities, I guess, once you get into the ability to do that, and not only to mention that that we've had the application upgrade tool, or I forget what the name of it is, but that's been a little bit not so broadly adopted just because it's not reliable and it's been a little bit clunky to use. But so not only the data migration tool, but if we have the ability to patch things as well. And again, if the fidelity of the XML that they're using to move around is accurate, then I'm sure that it's going to open a door for all kinds of opportunities down the road. So,
When are they looking at the release for version 8?
I have no idea, but I'm working to get this done so that, because this will require this next version. So, version 8 is going to require the next release of Claris. Sorry, I interpreted the question differently. And I don't know when the next release of Claris FileMaker is going to come out, but it's very soon. They said early summer at one point during the conference, but I think things are moving quicker. So I'm hoping sooner. And so we're trying to wrap up our work and have this tool ready so that it coincides with the release. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, so again, because analyses can be run more frequently, there is a view that you can get of the list of analyses that have run, and so in this view here, what you're seeing is it's being run manually invoked by myself, and then every other one is a schedule, and the schedule runs every minute. So in this minute, nothing happened. This minute, one addition, two modifications, and one deletion were picked up, and so on and so forth. So again, you can run it on a scheduled frequency, so your developers don't even know it's running behind the scenes. Or you can have the developers actually invoke it and also add a message as well. So let's look at another area that again, Inspector 7 had a lot of features, and we've been porting a lot of those features over to 8. One of them was about managing styles on a layout. And so here's a layout, and it's called styles feature, and it's got a default style. It's got 5 theme styled objects, and then it's got 5 layout styled, which means that you save the style, but you didn't save it into the theme. And then the last 10 objects are locally styled, which means you made changes, but you didn't save them as a style. So if we go look for that layout using Logicator, so we go type in styles, hit return. Now we're looking at styles. If we go to the styles section, now we see the first, the counts of items there. So if we make this window smaller and we go make changes to the layout, so this layout, I'm going to select all these and I'm going to associate them with the same theme style with the first one, and then these other ones I'm going to give them a different style. So I save the layout just by exiting into browse mode, and then I run it with Inspector, hold down the Option key, and it's running. If you go look here in the background, these numbers get updated, and it's done. So now you have feedback as you go, and as you're developing, you can get almost real-time feedback as to the changes that you're making. And so this layout, in a sense, has been refactored and optimized for better performance because you don't have the extra overhead to load those locally styled object or the layout styled objects, etc. So that's just an example of one type of thing that you can do. Inspector supports different users, adding different users. And so this example here, if you bring up the list of users, we can also add another user. So click the new user button, and then you can click, type in a name and type in their email address. Choose whether or not the user is an InspectorPro user or an admin user, and then type in your account. If they're an InspectorPro user, you can give them optionally the option to manage and create their own solutions. If you don't give them that option, then the only thing that the user can see is solutions that they've been added as a member to. You also have the ability to create an admin account, and so the admin account can do anything pretty much. So now that I created this account, I can go to a solution, and I can go and manage the list of users. I can add Tony Mennano as a manager. I can add myself as a developer, and I can add Brendan as an architect. And so these are the 3 people, apart from the admins, who would be able to see that solution and the data in it. Okay, so this is also kind of along the lines of troubleshooting and doing work in a system. So here's a file, and then I have this tab panel with these objects in it, and then in the inspector, those references or positions are given an absolute location. However, if we go look at that layout, and we go look at the objects on that layout. So I'm going to do a search for that layout called demo. And then I'm going to click on the objects and it takes me to the objects for that layout. Here's the text object that we were just looking at. And if you hover over the 15, it actually shows you the absolute position, but the 15 and the 78 are actually relative positions to its parent. And so we can reveal the parent, etc. But if you move the object out of the container or the tab panel and then process it, you'll see the object move out of the container it's in. And now it's just floating on its own. It's no longer in the container. And if you look at the history of changes, you'll see that the parent object type was panel, and now the parent object type is nothing. So if we go back into the solution and we undo that change, and then run inspector again, you'll see holding down the option key, I run it. Now the object reassociates itself to the parent. And you can turn off the green highlighting as well. Again, I'm just showing here the speed of which it's responsive. Again, this is over a WAN, so it's very responsive and it works really, really well. Okay. Okay, so additional information and problems. There's a lot to cover or convey with these small screens that we have. So mostly we have these list views, and as we saw with styles, you could just go to another sub-navigation area to look at styles. And so layouts, you have layout information, you have style information, and you have settings. We have the popover that we can present additional information, and this is just showing you here's all the script triggers and how many script triggers you have enabled, etc. And so with problems, in the past we just had a problem icon, but now we're trying to do more of this revealing and explaining of what are all the problems that the inspector is able to detect. And in the future, I have this request, long-standing request for for quite a while, and that is deep linking. Because we have UUIDs or somehow the keys to the items, it would be great if we could have bidirectional communication from a tool like this that could say, oh, I have this problem with this script trigger on this layout. Take me to this script trigger dialog so I can fix it. And so if we had deep linking, that would be the potential use case for what you could do with it. And if it was deep linking in both directions, then using or extracting the UUID of an item or getting a handle on it somehow, and then we could generate an equivalent a deep link protocol to our solution in a sense, or have an API where you send us a UUID and then we locate it. So then you could see things like here's the change history on a script or a field or a calc or whatever. So that holds promise that at some point we'll be able to do those kinds of things. This was something that we were able to add kind of at the last minute. And so here's a database. And here's 3 fields that are indexed, and this is in the actions table. Here's the actions table. Here's those 3 fields. Inspector is reporting that they're all indexed. You'll be able to type in an account name and password for that file, and you can do it on the found set or the selected record. And what you can do is you can drop the indexes right from Inspector. So if you can see stuff that is problematic and you have a lot of indexes that are that have been created and you want to clean them up, rather than use the developer tool to run them through there, you can delete them on the fly. And so if I run it, you'll see that the indexes get updated in Inspector. If I go to the dialog, you'll see that they actually got deleted in the table. So that's kind of a cool administrative or developer kind of feature, if you wish. Okay, any other questions?
Will it recreate the index automatically?
If you have that option enabled, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Like if you leave that option enabled, then
And kind of a corollary, and maybe I'm not as up to date as all these big time developers that are on the call, but I still do some low end development. Deleting large tables like the SQL drop table command, where you can get rid of all the data and then reconstruct the table without any records.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have FM SQL allowing us to do that, but you can do that with plugins, I guess. But that's another topic though, because if you remove the whole table and all the relationships that go with it,
Well, I'm interested in dropping the data in the table, not
well,
necessarily.
I mean, there's truncate. There's the truncate table feature. I don't know if you're aware of that. There's a script step that allows you to truncate the data in the table.
Okay, I'll have to look at that because I do a lot of virtual list stuff and,
Uh-huh.
and redoing those are a kind of a pain.
Yeah. So yeah, there is truncate table. So, but and it will drop, and there's some conditions under which it will run. So if you say delete all records in a table,
Mhm.
there's some conditions where that will get elevated to truncate to table, even if you say delete all records. So again, I don't remember all the conditions under which it gets
Okay.
elevated, but there is a script step for that.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was something that would be your functionality as well, like the drop index. Right?
Yeah, so for example here, if I say truncate, so there's truncate table, and you can say current table, or you can specify a table. So I can say I want to truncate the meetings table, and then I can have it with a dialogue or without a dialogue. So I can actually, get rid of like a million records and like really quickly. So
Okay. Appreciate that.
yeah. Okay. Any other questions? No. Okay. And something really amazing. Inspector 8 will be able to partner with whatever your favorite cat icon is, or kitty pet. So here, this kind of demo explains it and kind of visually. So I'm going to add a script step that, just emojis they're fine to use anywhere. I'm going to change this script step to, be another custom menu set, change this calculation, etc. And then I'm going to delete this step here. I'm going to save this script, and then I'm going to run it with Inspector. So I'm going to process it, and I'm going to go to Inspector, going to go to the dashboard, going to navigate to the script, do a search for that script. So it's called Master Project Script. So I'm going to search for it with Logicator, hit return. Now I'm looking at the script. I click on the Get Integration icon, and now I'm looking at the current state of that script checked into Git. And not only that, but you have the opportunity to look at a blame view of this. And for those of you who know what Git is, this is a blame view of the same script. But you can also go, I'm going to fast forward here, you can also go and look at the history. And the history, what it does is it shows you the most recent changes side to side for the prior state of the script and this state of the script. And we can see here that it picked up the changes to the add, and it also picked up the changes to the calculation and the deletion of the step as well. Yeah, so Git is going to be, we had this in 7 as a preview, but it's going to be something that will dramatically transform what we're able to document. What's really cool about Git integration is, for example, Alec could come to this view, and he can click this little plus icon, and he can make a comment on this line of code that I wrote here, and we can have a conversation about that change of code there. So I get a message that he messaged me there, And then all this work is going on in Git. We're just leveraging Git to help us document the changes and leverage what its capabilities are. Obviously, FileMaker is a unique animal in the space of computer software in many ways, and so we're just leveraging a part of Git. It isn't that you're able to copy this code and recreate your system from it or whatever, or go back and say, but at least it gives you a more professional way to look at changes, and then you can go back in time and see what it was, and then you can recreate it in the future. Hopefully, maybe there'll be a way to just copy it and paste it back in, but that's a long ways away. Yeah, so this is a new thing that we're moving towards, and Alec, who's been helping, Simon, who's been helping, and Brendan bring this to life. They all can't wait to be able to take advantage and use this internally as well. Any questions?
How's the multi-user testing been going? Have you had any issues?
I mean, the only issue is really the fact that it may, again, like I said, like if I go in and I make a layout change and I don't run the XML, then my changes are not recorded yet. If someone else goes in and makes a layout change, the catalog will pick up the change to be, it went from 5 modifications to 7, right? Because it skipped over 6 because you had made the change but didn't run it. And then it'll say 7, and then the most recent change is going to be by yourself. So you won't know who changed it before, and you won't know exactly. Actually, you may be able to tell what they changed, because attribution does kind of stick at the script level or the layout level. So if you change 2 different layouts, the person who changed layout A, well, the attribution will still be to that person. The person who changed layout B will still be attributed to the person who changed layout B. But if you both change layout A, then the attribution for the first person's changes gets lost. So it's just because there isn't a way right now to be able to run it as soon as the changes happen. And so it's really up to either setting up a schedule that runs more frequently and picking up as many changes as you can, or invoking it, having your developers invoke it as soon as a change is done. So they make a change and they run it, or assuming there's one person who's the designer and is doing layout changes, that person can be going to layout mode, getting back to browse mode, going back to layout mode, and so on and so forth until they're satisfied with their changes. And then they run it, type in a comment, fix the refresh issue on the layout or move things around, and then they run it, and then all those changes hopefully would be attributed to that person, seeing as nobody else is working on that layout. So there's
on production stuff, right? Stuff that's in production.
Well, what we're saying is you'd have a development server where you're doing all these changes, and when you're done, you can then migrate this to staging if you want. I mean, the other option is what we often do is we'll have our managers or whoever's testing it, they'll go into the dev server and they'll test as we're doing development. And they're aware that things are continually changing, but we'll ask them to test right then and there, so that we're not having the extra step of going to a staging server, test it, and then et cetera, et cetera. So we actually test there, and when they're satisfied with all the changes we've made, then we'll take that copy and we'll migrate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's I mean, we can go through feature comparison, but again, that's kind of long-winded, and it's just a lot of comparing of different features in 7 and 8. But I tend to be thinking that I think the recap is plenty at this point. So we just recap, and then we can take more questions. So just really quick, I mean, main goal of this release is to really help developers stay in the flow of their work. And again, I think not only from the point of view of getting out of the way as quickly as possible, but also being able to process it as quickly as possible and give them the results of their, of the work that they're doing. So for example, I have a field, and this field is referenced in these places. The field is on a layout. The field is referenced in this relationship. If I can tell that that table occurrence part of that relationship is not being used anywhere, and I know that there's no indirection, etc. So I can remove the field from the layout. I can then remove that relationship. Now the field is not referenced anywhere, and I can then ultimately delete the field. And all that can be done kind of iteratively. Like as I do these changes, I can run it and I can see my answers. So the whole idea is to stay in the flow and of thought and development. It's re-architected from the ground up. Again, it started many years ago. I paused for quite some time just because I wasn't seeing that the XML was being updated. And then last summer, there was so much work and so many fixes in the XML because I'm on ETS. I'm seeing those changes happen and see those changes come through. I picked up work in earnest and started to kind of move forward with this release. It's a one-to-one representation of what you have in your system. So no longer is it going to bloat your copy of Inspector with millions and millions of rows of data. It's just going to be like, if you have a large system, it's just going to be the number of records to represent that large system, etc. So it's one-to-one. So we have history tracking, we have attribution, something I didn't cover, but we have notes and tags, which are really cool. You can attach a tag to anything, and then if you you do a sprint of development over a couple of months, and then you kind of want to reset Inspector, you could clear out all the analyses, and then what you could do is when you start analyzing again, those notes and tags, they will reconnect themselves to whatever you've added them to. So so that's really helpful. We have attribution as we saw. We have built-in logicator support, which is a tool that Mark Scott developed at Beezwax. If you have never seen it, I invite you to check it out. It's a really cool, like a way to add an intuitive search interface to your solutions. We have Git integration support that's coming. And then also with this release, we're moving over to subscription-based pricing. Global search, we've extended it.
Exclusively subscription-based, or
What's that?
is that exclusively?
No,
Okay.
no, you can buy a perpetual license as well.
Okay.
Global search, I was saying that we've added support for searching in history. So history is where everything gets noted. So like if you add something, you modify something or delete something, it will show up there. So like in the example I showed before, I deleted something. Even though it's gone, I can still kind of recover it and see what the changes were to it because we're tracking that. We have new capabilities and features that are available in the Save as XML. Like I talked about, catalogs, attribution, layout parts, and table occurrence notes, and there's many more things. There's a little bit. It's been the Save as XML has been basically also re-architected and improved in many ways. So lots of cool changes there. And this just really sets the foundation for us for future opportunities. I mean, we have so many ideas in our backlog. So, for example, one of the ideas is to leverage the history table, and as changes show up in the history table, we can check them against kind of an actions flow. And so if you're responsible for a very critical script in your business, integration with AWS or some other integration, you want to be notified anytime your script is modified in any way. And so you can set up an action to be notified via email or Slack. And so, someone deletes a field and they didn't check Inspector to see where that field was referenced, and it causes havoc on your script. You'll be notified immediately that your script was altered in some way. So it's proactive ways of working. And that's it. That's it.
Vince, since it's now running by server, when it comes to a license, is it by server?
No, you can install it on multiple servers.
Okay.
So it's a user-based license model. So more details to follow, but basically you decide how many number of users you want to allow access, and then each user then has access to different copies of Inspector, etc. So yeah, and you can put as many solutions in there as you like.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Very nice. I can't believe all the things that you do. This would be a career by itself, but it's just one element of your career.
Yeah. Well, it's lately it's been all that I do in the last like four months roughly. It's been intense. It's yeah, there's a lot of detail. There's a lot of attention to detail,
Is
etc.
Clay Mackle upset that you're holding his feet to the fire in XML, or?
He did mention at some point, that I send him a lot of requests, and most of them he's happy to implement. Some of them we have arguments about, but so be it. But yeah, so really grateful. I mean, I asked for Save as XML to be server compatible, and literally, like, I forget how long it was, but it wasn't shortly thereafter. All of a sudden, Save as XML was server compatible, and a number of other things in the XML that needed to get corrected, and so they're on it. They're definitely on it. There's definitely activity in the XML area of things, and we'll see some cool things in the future.
So just for clarification, so this InspectorPro 8 is not yet available, and it's waiting for the next iteration of Save as XML.
Yeah, and when you run it, there'll be like over here you have this option here. This will be 20, whatever it will be, whatever that version is going to be. It's going to be the version that's going to be required to open Inspector. And so if you don't have it, you won't even be able to open it to use it. So
The graphs that you did, were they a function of Keynote or Tavarua or Tableau rather?
which one? The graphs I did?
Bar
Oh, you
charts
mean
that you had done earlier.
oh, like you mean like
The pretty
you
looking.
mean this thing here? This
Yeah.
thing? Yeah, no, that's chart.js or something like that. And
Okay.
basically it's just taking this blob of data, some parts of this data, and turning it into JSON and representing it here. And we have plans to also have dashboards in Inspector 8. However, those may be delayed a little bit. Again, we have a long list of new things and additional things we want to add, but we're laying the foundation to be able to then move on and do other stuff. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yep.
It looks pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely appreciate you coming and presenting it for us.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me. And yes, I can't wait to get it done. It's at one of these, there's different stages of the process, and I tend to be, I don't know if you call it crazy, fanatical, whatever, but like I tend to be very picky and detailed oriented, and so I rebuilt Inspector in different ways, different areas over the years, but this has been definitely a major undertaking. I had to rewrite all the XSLs, and there's like over 600 of them. There's like 700, but there's like 600 actually XSLs, and those all had to be rewritten from scratch and tested using
Wow.
XML and finding bugs and all this stuff. And so at some point in the stage, it's like, yeah, you get started, you feel like, okay, this is going well. And then it's like you're so into it, and it's such a long road to hell ahead. You think to yourself, oh my God, what the hell was I thinking? But then you get past that hump, and you see like, oh, okay, all the XSL work is done, and you know the architecture is in a good state. And then it's just kind of polishing, like, okay, this needs work. The hard stuff is done. So we're definitely past that point now. So
You need to get out and get a sunburn.
yeah.
Yeah, it's very exciting stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, the whole platform is changing. I don't know if you've been following, like, the discussion about Claris Studio, Claris Connect, getting all blended in there and all that. But
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting to see, and with AI too. Like, I mean, if you have to have lived under a rock not to hear the word AI mentioned
Yeah.
anywhere, but AI is definitely coming, and all kinds of things that people are experimenting with AI as well. I think Brian, you gave a presentation that was really cool a few months back, I think it was, right? Yeah. So, yep.
Yeah, actually, since Engage, when they announced the free tier of Connect, I've actually been doing some projects and utilizing Connect now for the first time, because there's finally the ability to get in there and start playing with it and find out if it's got the value for me and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've been able to do a few pretty cool things with Connect that I'm like, all right, okay, now I see. Now I see where this is,
Yeah.
Well, I think I'll go ahead and stop the recording, and we'll make that the end of the session, and we'll just, anybody that wants to hang out and talk about anything random from here on out, we're more than welcome to. And so, where is it?